Hey everyone! This should be the last of the delayed episodes, as I'll have the Christmas season to recharge and reset. There was a lot of reveals in the last episode, and typically when there's so many reveals, a lot of my rascally critics come out of the woodwork to dissect all the information I disseminated. I think it's prudent to note that I haven't really steered anyone wrong yet, so try not to go astray so easily. What am I doing? These riddles are meant to go at the end of the episodes. Last time the fighting reached its end both on the surface and beneath it. Sasuke delivered the final blow to our arc's antagonist after he seemingly did everything he could to harm the very clan he meant to help. Meanwhile, above, Naruto embraced the power of Kurama, who met out a catastrophic end to their controlled leader. This episode today marks the final of the arc and opens the door to the various arcs I have yet to unleash upon you all. Hopefully I'll have answered all the questions that you have from this arc by the end of today's episode. I certainly threw in a lot of mysteries I hope I've kept up with myself. No one seemed discontent with Karin's sudden appearance, but I'll share that anyway. I technically introduced her arrival when Hinata fought with Kiba, and Hinata saw a blur of a person arriving to aid Shino. That blur was Karin, but it was nearly a throwaway line from like 5 episodes ago, so I won't expect anyone to remember it, but just in case one of you do, it was not for nothing. How do we end this arc? What is there left to do, other than get answers? Let's dive in and have a great time through it. The storm's passing left behind a heavy silence. From above, the battlefield beyond the Hokage faces on the summit was a patchwork of scars and stories. The ground, damp and glistening from the rain, bore jagged lines where jutsu had torn through it, interspersed with craters still steaming faintly from lingering heat. Shattered shingles from the Hokage's rooftop lay scattered across its yard, reminders of the chaos that had reigned here moments ago. At the epicenter of it all, Minato's body lay still, his chest rising shallowly, though his face was pale and slack. Karin was steady beside him, her fiery red hair a striking contrast to the dreary mud she knelt in. She winced slightly as she withdrew her arm, bleeding from her offer of healing chakra. Nearby, Neji stood as if guarding the scene, his figure straight despite the bruises that marred his arms and neck. Shino crouched low, his ever-present insects spiraling in quiet patterns as if reflecting his thoughts. Tenten's posture was tense, her shoulders squared, her hands clenching and wrapping around her chest from the doubtlessly broken ribs. Naruto sat some distance away, his knees drawn up, shoulders heaving as if each breath was a struggle against the exhaustion of both battle and emotion. Sakura's pink hair clung to her damp cheeks, her gaze set firmly on the horizon as she knelt beside Naruto, wrapping a quick bandage around her own cut-up arms. Sasuke leaned against a jagged outcropping of rubble, his profile sharp against the sunlight breaking through the thinning clouds. His expression was unreadable, but his movements spoke volumes as he cleaned his newly acquired tanto in slow, deliberate strokes, the blade catching the golden light. Below, where the Hokage building loomed like a weathered sentinel, Choji, Shikamaru, and Rock Lee lay crumpled on the rooftop. Shikamaru's arm dangled over the edge, his fingers slack, and his face streaked with mud and sweat, though his chest rose and fell with steady breaths. Choji sat upright, conscious, as he blinked slowly at the gentler clouds above. Lee sprawled out with his arms flung wide, seemed eerily still, his normally vibrant energy now a nearly empty vessel. The ground between the Kage faces and the Hokage building told another story, a muddy battlefield where Kiba lay sprawled like a discarded doll, his pants torn, blood streaking his arm. His loyal Akamaru had found his way to his master, only to lay curled beside him, whining softly, nudging his master's hand with a weary nose. Far away in a quiet hospital room, Hinata stirred in her bed, her bandaged hands and arms twitching faintly as though reliving the battle in restless dreams. The curtains fluttered in the now soft wind, allowing rays of sunlight to dance on her closed eyelids. Panning back to the scene atop the Kage heads, Shino and Neji carefully lift Minato. Their movements are methodical despite their combined exhaustion. Sakura joined them, wiping her hands on her tattered clothing before sliding her arms under his legs. Together, the three of them began the slow descent towards the village, the Hokage carried like a fallen soldier of legend. Karin followed, her face a mask of conflicted emotions. She had just witnessed a clash of monsters and now aided them both. Naruto moved next, his weary gaze falling on Kiba, sensing his chakra as the weakest of anyone following the battle's end. With a determined grunt, he stood, shaking his arms free of the fatigue that clung to them, and leaped down. The ground smushed wetly beneath his feet as he landed beside Kiba, droplets of water springing up from the impact. He bent low, gingerly sliding his arms beneath his unconscious friend. Akamaru barked once, weak but approving, before slumping against Naruto's leg in gratitude. Above, Sasuke sheathed his blade, turning his attention to the rooftop where Choji, Shikamaru, and Lee lay. Tenten had already knelt by Lee, brushing a stray strand of hair from his face with surprising gentleness. Ino joined her, touching Shikamaru's shoulder lightly, her lips pressed into a firm line as she nudged him awake. Together, the three of them began rousing their teammates, their movements careful and deliberate. Sasuke joined them silently, helping Choji to his feet with a firm tug, his own exhaustion showing only in the tightness of his jaw. From the vantage point above, the village slowly came to life. The crowd had gathered, their voices a distant murmur, their faces turned upward towards the monument where the battles had unfolded. Their collective expressions ranged from awe to fear to curiosity, as though they were unsure what to feel in the wake of such a monumental clash. The sun broke fully through the dissipating clouds, painting the scene in stark clarity. The once wounded battlefield now teemed with movement. The wounded were carried, cradled, or supported, their paths converging towards the hospital that loomed in the distance, its windows reflecting the bright afternoon light. The air was crisp and earthy, as if the world itself had been reborn. The scent of wet soil rises, rich and deep, mingling with the faint sweetness of plants long thirsty for the rain. It is a fresh, revitalizing aroma, sharp yet soothing, carrying a promise of renewal. The moisture hung in the air, cool against the skin, filling the lungs with a sensation of clarity, like breathing for the first time after a long wait. And as we pull away, we capture the full aftermath. A village battered through a veil, but still standing strong. Its heroes weary but alive. Its future uncertain, but brimming with possibility. Naruto is right, Neji confirmed, looking across Minato's bed at Lee, who continually denied anything unique about his power. You have a different... I struggle to call it a chakra type. It is ki, not chakra, Lee defended himself. Perhaps that is why you are seeing it as something else. No, Neji muttered. No, it's chakra for sure. If it is truly chakra, then why is it I cannot use hand seals to create jutsu, but I can still manipulate my surroundings? Lee asked, raising an annoyed eyebrow at Neji. There was really no reason why he should defend himself, but Lee had spent years mastering use of this ki energy and had become proud of it. If it turned out that it was chakra all along, then it was doubly frustrating that he couldn't make it materialize in the same way as all the shinobi around him. Lee frowned at the others in the room and shrugged. I do not know what you want me to do. There's no medical variant of ki training. Try... Naruto mumbled, making a motion with his palm forward, pushing it into him. Pushing what? Lee asked, shoulders raising to his ears in confusion. I do not control this technique the same way you people control chakra. It does not come out the same way. If I could, Neji muttered again, walking around the bed and to Lee's side, take your element and use it properly? I still do not have shadow or... I suppose yours might be akin to light? Kurama says it's definitely the trick to waking up my dad, Naruto said after a moment of silence to himself. Why would the fox be interested in waking Lord Fourth up? Lee asked quizzically. Kurama, Naruto corrected. He defeated my dad when he was controlled for us. The least we can do is call him by his name. After a few moments of silent recognition, Naruto went on. Kurama respects powerful people. Just put your palm on his chest and try to activate it, Neji recited, hoping just raw physical action would be enough to activate Lee's ability. He's been unconscious for a week and doesn't react to anything, Naruto insisted. Just try it. With no intent, nothing would happen, Lee argued, dumbfounded by his perspective in the debacle. This must have been how they felt when trying to describe chakra to him for all those years. Just put hands on him, Neji and Naruto said together, frustrated that Lee wouldn't even go that far. Ugh! Naruto complained at Lee's non-compliance. I'm going to Hinata's room. Call me back if he actually decides to try something. Hinata was set to be discharged today. As the heir to the Hyuga clan, she received prompt quality treatment so that she could recover as quickly as possible. Of course, her uncle and current head had something to say about Kiba doing so much damage to her, but she fiercely defended him. It was the dangerous jutsu that she performed that got her so injured, and Kiba was only doing what he thought was right. Now, at a time when the village didn't have any Anbu to protect it, and the Aburame clan had left on a pilgrimage, and all Jonin had been flooded with missions, they could not afford to have further petty conflicts with each other. And Hisashi was baffled to see this boisterous side of Hinata. She was covered, from head to toe, in burns and cuts and bruises, but she still had the energy and gumption to shout at him for being angry at someone 25 years younger than him. Though he wondered where her sudden courage came from, Hisashi caved immediately to her determination. She had been so dutiful her whole life that this new side was something he neither expected nor knew how to handle. And now, as she prepared to depart from the hospital, Sakura, Sasuke, and Naruto waited in her room for her to be ready to go. Her uncle waited at the entrance to Minato's room, with many other family heads. Inoichi, Shikaku, and Choza stood with shared worry that such a mighty battle had occurred, and none of them had any idea. For their Hokage to be so injured, to fall into an indefinite coma, and they were none the wiser, brought great shame to them all. Shino stood alongside them as the stand-in for his father as head of the Aburame clan. Nearby, Tsume Inuzuka stood with her great wolf, Kuromaru, sitting silently at her side. Tsunade stood outside only at the request of Naruto so that Lee could work his magic, though she stood as the head of the Senju all the same. Sasuke was not summoned, despite technically being the head of his own clan now. With his family tearing themselves apart, the clan had fallen out of such graces as to stand vigil for good or bad word of their Hokage's revival. The Sarutobi clan were absent from this collection of heads. Since Asuma's departure, the family had become disorganized and chaotic, unwilling to pick a new leader. The various families had begun a plan to choose a new Hokage until Naruto insisted he could wake his father up. Still, they were not hopeful. If Lady Tsunade was unable to wake up the Hokage, what could his teenaged son accomplish? Why can't you just try? Neji asked, perplexed. The weight of all the clan heads waiting outside was heavy on Neji's shoulders. He almost wished he had never entered the room, because now he didn't want to leave it in failure. But the only person who Naruto had insisted could wake the Hokage was refusing to perform any action. If I put hands on him and I have the wrong intent in my head, I could also cause serious damage, Lee argued, displaying his tribulations about putting hands on the leader of the village. And if you don't touch him at all, he'll remain useless to everyone, Neji reasoned. He might as well be dead right now. They're trying to figure out if they need to select a new Hokage. Don't you realize the gravity of that decision? How could you have the wrong intent? Don't you want him to wake up? Of course I do, Lee nearly shouted before both of them glanced at the entrance to the room, hopeful that no one overheard that outburst. Regardless of our individual ability, I have always wanted only to fight for the village and our Hokage. He is our greatest champion who will save us from the darkness and whom we must save from any threat. Sounds like you care. So why don't you do anything about it? Neji asked, frown turning angry. For Neji, this was all a waste of time. Lee was being wishy-washy when he could just try anything. There wasn't a much worse state the Hokage could be in. You keep telling us that you became a master of this key, yet you don't know how you can lay hands on the Hokage. Those don't sound like the words of a master, Neji said, wondering if he should try to absorb some of the chakra type from Lee for real, given this hesitation. I will try. Give me a moment to deliberate before, though. Lee shrugged, at long last, reaching over the bed and placing a lone hand on Minato's chest. Choking down a deep breath from shock, Minato lurched to consciousness instantly. Withdrawing his hands in the same breath, Lee froze at the instant success. He's awake! Neji shouted for the other clan heads to enter, caring little for why such little effort did it. You could have done that from the start, Tenten argued after hearing their collective storytelling about waking the Hokage up. They were in a strange rut of lazy days as they all waited for the Hokage to recover. Now, the triumphant 12 all sat together to contemplate their recent battle against each other. I did not know that would be so easy, Lee admitted with a dropped head. Silence fell between them again. The forest stood silent and still, a sanctuary of solitude, untouched by the chaos of human affairs. Beneath its sprawling canopy, the triumphant 12 and Karin had gathered, their presence barely a whisper amid the dense foliage and rustling undergrowth. Each of them bore the invisible weight of the last 2 weeks spent under the village's scrutiny, their faces etched with lines of fatigue and unease. Sunlight filtered weakly through the leaves above, dappling their worn forms with fleeting spots of light, but even the warmth of nature's embrace could not banish the collective shadow that hung over them. In the village, their names had become a ceaseless echo, uttered with equal parts reverence and resentment. Every street corner, every whisper in the crowd carried the sting of accusation or the burden of what they felt as misplaced heroism. Half the villagers saw them as criminals, reckless shinobi who had dared to raise their hands against the Hokage, the symbol of Konoha's strength and unity. The other half viewed them as saviors, the ones who had fought and bled to free the Hokage from whatever unseen force had twisted him. But to the 12 here and now, it felt like neither side truly understood. The clash of ignorant opinions had become a storm they couldn't escape, battering them with questions, demands, and judgments that left no space to breathe. Their retreat to the forest had not been planned, but it had become necessary. Here, in this forgotten place, they sought refuge from the ceaseless barrage of eyes and voices that awaited them in the village. Here, the branches shielded them from the world's gaze, and the ground did not vibrate with the tread of angry feet or hopeful followers. They sat scattered across a clearing, some leaning against the sturdy trunks of ancient trees, others slumped on the mossy ground. The exhaustion was palpable, not just physical but spiritual, a deep gnawing weariness that came from being pulled apart by the expectations of others. Naruto sat with his back against a gnarled tree, his hands gripping his knees as he stared at the dirt. For all his boundless energy, even he looked drained. Nearby, Sakura rubbed her temples, her shoulders slumped as if trying to block out the memory of villagers who had shouted at her in the streets. Shikamaru lay sprawled in the grass, his eyes fixed on the clouds above, though they held none of the comfort they usually had. Kiba sat apart from the others, his fists clenched tightly, his jaws set. His anger at a decision poorly made, a barely concealed boil beneath his exhausted exterior. I couldn't even do anything, Choji groaned at last. I was trying to hold back so we wouldn't destroy the Hokage building. How do you think I feel? Ino asked. Captured or sealed or both. I couldn't even show off half my tricks. Show off? Shikamaru asked. I think you're missing the point. That's right, Kiba started. I led half of you astray on a fool's errand. Why wouldn't we just trust each other from the very beginning? I can't blame anyone, Shikamaru admitted. I had put up blinders. I couldn't see what was right in front of my face. There had to have been signs for the last 3 years that I chose to ignore. Well, that's all behind us, Sakura said. We're all on the same page now, right? If we're approaching this from a place of trust, then I have something to tell all of you, Choji said with strain. I met someone called Sage Pain when I was away, in the land of rain. I believe he's someone everyone should be worried about. Yes, Kiba nodded. I fought him. Well, I attacked him, and he just sort of put up with it. You're lucky to still be alive, Choji gasped, stunned that another one of them had an interaction with the man. As long as we're talking about threats, Sasuke said after their excited mumblings died down, I met another version of Orochimaru. What? Everyone said in unison, having all understood that the man had died. The one I had met had no resemblance to the man we all knew growing up, Sasuke clarified. We knew a recluse who may have been a grump, but otherwise stood on our side of the fence. This man that I met, though, I felt endangered in his very presence. Kurenai-sensei passed away, Sakura said after some time, and Asuma-sensei has become a rogue ninja. Kakashi-sensei has been unheard of all this time, and who knows where Gai-sensei is. We've even lost our teachers. I think I'm beyond a genin by now, Ino said with indignation. We should all be made chunin just from this experience with the Hokage. I suspect some of us will be, Neji noted, implying himself far more than her. Neji drilled a toe into the ground as he hesitated with his own news. Never mind. He couldn't possibly share Hyuga's secrets with his Byakugan with these random teenagers. Even now, Danzo was imprisoned somewhere unknown in the village with seals around his eyes and mouth to prevent him trying anything foolish until a final sentence could be passed on him. Atop the Kage heads at the moment they discovered him alive, it was Neji that flew to his defense and threatened violence on anyone who might wish Danzo harm. Since his Higeshi had awakened, Neji felt this strange connection to Danzo, and rather it was explored while Danzo was still alive, rather than risk executing him and finding all answers eluding him. Everyone in the village continued to look at him odd, since it didn't exactly look like your typical Byakugan. The veins along his temples had grown in number and intensified, and the gray and sometimes pale pink color had turned a deep violet. He also had 2 definable rings within his iris that were faint but easily noticeable from a talking distance. So what are we going to do now? Shino asked the group. Just keep on going, Naruto answered. When my father returns to health, he'll have all the answers we need. And just like that, just one more week passed before Naruto found an Anbu with gray hair delivering a message to him. It struck him odd to see an Anbu within the village. Clearly Minato had begun to select new Anbu to start repopulating his elite forces. But for now they were apparently just messengers. This message in particular was calling Naruto home. By the time he looked up from the note, the Anbu had vanished into thin air. Naruto smirked as he sensed the chakra rapidly dashing away from him. Kakashi-sensei, he muttered, recognizing the chakra signal. So the Anbu weren't entirely new. Returning home, Naruto was shocked to see Sakura approaching the front door. Appearing at her side, Naruto smiled at her, and she smiled back. He felt tears well at the edge of his eyes, and wondered why he felt a sudden urge to cry. Today was a happy one. His father had recovered and returned home at long last. Today would be the first time in years that he got to walk through the front door and face his sole guardian and hero. Sakura was even here by his side as he made entry. There shouldn't have been anything to make him sad. Blinking away the tears, Naruto breathed back the surging emotions and opened the door for Sakura. Sitting in the living room, Sasuke looked up at them perplexed, lifting a note that matched Sakura and Naruto's. Looking up the stairs, Naruto could sense his dad milling about in his room, so he shrugged and joined Sasuke with Sakura. Naruto had actually not seen his dad since he was discharged from the hospital. He wondered if he had changed at all, or if he would be the same embodiment of confidence that Naruto knew him for. Suddenly, just appearing opposite them, Minato sat in a chair, smiling gently. "Hello, Sakura," Minato greeted with soft eyes. "You have my eternal thanks for reviving Jiraiya-sensei. That was a miracle that even Lady Tsunade could not correct. Between him and Lee healing me, the Lady Sannin is feeling just a little bit like she's been surpassed right now." "Oh no," Sakura gasped, stunned at the revelation. "I'd have to work another few lifetimes to hope to rival Lady Tsunade in anything." Grinning with humor, Minato turned to Sasuke. "Only you could have routed out Shisui, and I thank you for the timing that you did. Had he held control over me for even a week longer, I fear I'd have been lost forever. It was a group effort, Sasuke admitted, diverting the credit. I may have stopped him, but I wouldn't have even suspected him if not for the others. Naruto, Minato muttered, his voice nearly robbed in his throat when he said his son's name. You were stolen away from me for nearly 4 years, and you still found your way back, and you're stronger than ever. Kurama fights with you, instead of always against you. You even slew one of the 7 swordsmen. Your transformation has left me reeling, and I'm forever proud of your growth. And of course, it would be you to recognize something strange about my behavior. Naruto felt another surge of emotion and couldn't bring himself to answering his dad. Mutely, he smiled and nodded bashfully at the adulations. As much as I'd like to just sit here and have such a happy reunion with you all, there is actually a lot of business to attend to, Minato explained, his smile turning ever so slightly grim. Doubtless you all have questions about so many things. Let's start small, Sasuke. Shisui was quite easy to defeat, Sasuke told him. How could you have fallen under his grasp? Ah, yes, Minato sighed. The Uchiha clan is known more than any other clan for churning out geniuses. Madara, of course, as the poster boy for the clan. Not even a Kage, but strong enough to face the strongest of ours. Fugaku, your father, who had such restraint that despite my station, I always felt he was worthy of my respect. Shisui was next, an absolute genius, who mastered the shadow style as a child, and together with his body flicker, he was nearly impossible to strike in battle, while still dealing all the lethal strikes he needed to. Of course, your brother Itachi followed closely after. It feels like each genius eclipses the one that came before them, but all of them lose their life before they can truly shift the paradigm, for better or for worse. Make no mistake, Shisui was among the strongest opponents I have ever faced. However, I had built-in advantages. Built-in advantages? Sakura asked, confused by the wording. Like a Kekkei Genkai? No. Minato chuckled at the guess. There are advantages to the Uzumaki being a traveling tribe. They're a neutral force to every country they pass through. When one hears the word neutral, they might think non-partisan, gray, uninterested, uninvolved, but that couldn't be further from the truth with the Uzumaki. It benefits them for nations to remain strong for as long as possible so they can continue to make trades and travel safely. Whenever a new Kage in any great nation is chosen, the Uzumaki sends their Master of Seals to place several seals on that Kage. These seals are protective and are meant to protect us from manipulation. It is of too much cost to protect me from ninjutsu or taijutsu, but to protect me from genjutsu can prevent people like Shisui from easily taking over an entire nation. Though strictly a Kekkei Genkai, the nature of his Kotoa Matsukami matches that of a genjutsu, albeit the strongest of all genjutsu. Had I not had these protective seals, I may have just been able to resist his first attempt if I was lucky. But anything more and I would have fallen under his absolute control. It can never be understated. The Kotoa Matsukami would have worked on any of you and anyone in the village without an ounce of struggle. The Uzumaki are the progenitors of Fuinjutsu. It's not a school of jutsu easily thwarted because all its secrets are tightly kept by this traveling clan. Shisui had no way of knowing these things. I didn't know these things the day before I became a Hokage. Okay, fine. The Kotoa Matsukami had several barriers to break before getting to you, and you're so strong that you alone could have resisted some anyway, Sasuke repeated in a more succinct manner. But I did not struggle to defeat him. How could that possibly be, if he was in your Onbu? Sasuke, Minato shook his head. He was controlling me the entire time he was fighting you. Can you imagine that? I'm resisting still, weakly, but always I'm there trying to take control back. He has to contend with that, and also all of you attacking me with all those crazy new abilities you've each come up with. The Kotoa Matsukami is only as powerful as the person using it, and he has to control his own body to fight you, but he's blind and tired. Every time he slept, his channeling on me weakened. The man was sleep-deprived, starved, exhausted at all times. For all these handicaps, I'd argue he did extraordinarily well. I see. So, had he not been controlling you, I wouldn't have been able to defeat him. Sasuke wondered, grimacing at the news. Honestly, I'm not sure, Minato admitted with a slight shrug. I think you could have given him a run for his money, but at the end of the day, I think Shisui would have won. But take note that even while he controlled me, I've always been aware of what's going on. What he saw and became confused by, I saw and understood, such as the remote Edo Tensei. Nice job feeding him an incorrect jutsu that could have been devastating had you given him the correct formula. How can you say that? Sasuke asked. You haven't even seen me at my best. Nowhere during that fight was I pushed to my limits. And I do look forward to one day seeing that. Minato nodded confidently. Disappearing for a minute and reappearing with a tray of tea, Minato offered some to the three of them and sat back down with a cup of his own. All right, Minato said as he prepared for his next topic. And Sasuke started again. Why did Shisui make a body replica for Itachi? Weren't they enemies? I admire your attention to detail, Sasuke, Minato recognized. First, I have a story to tell. Naruto, on the day of your birth, a man named Nagato appeared in our village and freed the fox from your mother's seal. The fox went on a rampage upon being freed and killed the third Hokage in its wanton destruction. When a beast is released from its host, that sets a very fast, finite timer on the remainder of the host's life. Kushina did not have much time left. As myself and the other clan heads faced off against Nagato, Kushina had other plans. She formed the Reaper Death Seal to lock her spirit away inside a realm with the fox for them to fight eternally. She took all but a sliver of the fox's chakra, placing that sliver inside you. The Reaper Death Seal is far more complex than simply being strong enough to seal an entire tailed beast. It demands a trade. Even though she had limited time anyway, Kushina still opted to take this route to lock the malicious side of the fox away with her. However, when Kushina was just a child, the third Hokage did the exact same thing to her that she did to you. He sealed just a sliver of the fox's chakra inside of her, and yet, cultivated in the seal, the fox grew back to its former strength, ferocity, and malevolence. And compared to when you were a child to now, the fox has exploded in power. I saw its pure, unfiltered power on the summit when we fought. The fox is no longer a sliver, and it may not have turned fully malicious yet, but it will soon, if history tells us anything. Kurama, Naruto muttered weakly before repeating, his name's Kurama, and he's not as bad as you think. Minato's eyes widened and sparkled at Naruto's defense of the fox. I hope for everyone's sake that you and Kurama grow to be great friends. You would break the cycle in doing so. When Kushina was still a child, the fox, Kurama, was nice to her, but she didn't have a very strong connection to it. Ever since you were a child, though, you seemed to have a natural affinity with Kurama. You were friends with it. At times you spoke to it as if it were in the room with us, while other times Kurama literally materialized before my eyes. How could such a beast in a prison materialize like that? It would have been unable to, which means that you two worked together so well that you offered your own chakra so that it could materialize. You might not remember these moments, Naruto, but Kurama certainly will. Just as Kurama will remember when you decided to reject its presence. When materialized and running around town with you, Kurama terrified other villagers. You were unfortunately taught to keep Kurama suppressed and stop sharing your chakra with it. But the point is that right now, as we speak, your mother's spirit is embroiled in a war with another version of Kurama. The tailed beasts are just eternal fountains of chakra. Shear one away to a single hair, and that hair will regrow to the whole beast again and again. I want more than anything to free Kushina from her eternal torment against this malicious version of Kurama, but to free her, I would be freeing the other version of the fox. If we did this, Naruto stumbled at the possible revelation. We could bring Mom back to life? Pausing at the suggestion, Minato shook his head, unsure. No one's ever attempted what I'm suggesting. At the very most, we'd bring her back to life. But at the very least, we'd be freeing her spirit to rest at ease finally. Even at the very least, I just want her to rest. And crazy as it may sound right now, that brings me to you, Sakura. Me? Sakura asked, perplexed. How could I possibly tie into any of this? Jiraiya only taught you one seal that you used in the Chunin exams before he was knocked out and you were sent to war. However, you somehow took this base knowledge and used it to create further seals. That technique you used to revive Jiraiya, for example, was a type of release used on a Fuinjutsu that typically only the Uzumaki have knowledge of. Lady Tsunade had certainly never heard of it before and couldn't find a source for where you would have learned it. Ergo, you came up with it yourself, no? Well, Sakura stumbled as well. Sort of. Fuinjutsu is pretty intuitive. I'm sure you figured out a few yourself. Yes, I have figured out a few seals, but not necessarily the keys to unlocking them. I only have the knowledge because Kushina taught me a lot of it, Minato explained, adding substantial gravity to Sakura's invention of a highly sought-after key to unseal jutsu. However, I'm not blind, and though Naruto still has a ways to go with his sensory technique, I have fully mastered it. I can see this bestial chakra churning inside of you. Whatever happened to you in your time away, you've returned with a significant gift. The world at large often sees the tailed beasts as raw sources of chakra, beasts of destruction. But they're just so much more complicated than that. They've theoretically existed since the times of the Sage of Six Paths. That means they have memory of a time when jutsu was first being invented. They're aware of jutsu that are archaic marvels, their methods and uses lost to time. As I have personally witnessed, Kurama is capable of using jutsu itself through Kushina. The beasts aren't just titans of chakra, they're also archives of knowledge. In no way am I downplaying your own genius, Sakura, but I think that this bestial chakra within you is passing knowledge of jutsu to you. I think it can teach you Fuinjutsu not even the Uzumaki clan have thought of, and any kind of technique may be possible. More than the raw power potential in your slivers of the tailed beasts, you have somehow begun to extract knowledge from immortal creatures that walked the land long before any of us drew breath. You don't have as much chakra as the rest of us in this room, but if Naruto can help wrangle a second evil fox, we could use its chakra to power your more complex jutsu. With a sliver of the fox already in you, your body would not be consumed by such a vast use of its power. Because of this, and through that knowledge, I think you can help solve the enigma of Kushina's curse, and even Sasuke's debacle. My debacle? Sasuke repeated quizzically. I think it's time you heard the truth about the night your family was massacred, Minato said. Oh, no need. Sasuke shook his head. I got the truth straight from Shisui before I killed him. Minato studied Sasuke for a few moments at the news before shaking his head. No, I'm sorry, Sasuke. I don't think he told you everything, or you'd have more questions for me. It's possible he didn't know everything. What are you talking about? Sasuke asked. He said he waited until you were gone before enacting his plan. How could you possibly know anything more? That is correct, Minato nodded. I wasn't present for it. However, there was a single survivor who died shortly after I was summoned to the scene. He told me the most crucial information. What? Sasuke shook from the news, dumbstruck. Would that night that his clan destroyed itself ever be fully solved? Shisui didn't have time to hang around. He thought the damage was done, so he turned tail and fled the first chance he got. But someone not only survived the disaster, but held on long enough to give me the information, Minato explained carefully. Who? Sasuke asked, his hair standing on end. Your father, Fugaku, Minato revealed. He was in a bad way when I arrived. There was nothing we could have done to save him at that point. But he had crucial information for us to properly understand what all had happened before he passed away. He was a hero to the very end. Please, sir, explain. Sasuke requested, his entire body rigid. Shisui hated your family in particular more than any other members of the clan, Minato explained. It makes sense that he would withhold this information with you, even in the moments before his end. Your father had the Mangekyo Sharingan, and was known to prolifically use his unique ability. In this case, that unique ability came in incredibly handy. Fugaku was able to freeze time. This is more limiting than you think. He could choose to either freeze himself in time, allowing time to flow normally while he was stuck, or he could choose to freeze everything around him, but he was stuck in place for the duration. It let him plan out the best answers during missions and made him extremely efficient. But when dealt a deadly blow, he opted to freeze himself and allow time to flow normally so that he wouldn't bleed out while waiting for someone to arrive. He always joked that it was simultaneously the best ability and the worst, but having the infinite window of time to figure out the best answer to any problem is so incredibly powerful. It made him an ideal leader. What did he tell you? Sasuke asked, disinterested in Minato's flavorful input of the usefulness of freezing time. Shisui was beside your father when that orb devoured everything. It was sheer dumb luck that Shisui wasn't hit by it. But it was shortly after this destruction that Shisui cowered and ran. The chaining of Mangekyo abilities is certainly what took out most of your clan that night, not Shisui. And while your mother and brother were consumed by this strange singularity, your father witnessed everything and had the time to think about its implications. That orb that consumed everything didn't strictly destroy everything it touched. Fugaku was a bit older than me, and every time he saw me use the flying Raishin as I was growing up, and after I became Hokage, it cemented what space-time jutsu looked like to him. He said this orb behaved in much the same way. It looked the same, and even in his state of injury, Fugaku had the battle-honed mind to chronicle everything without panicking about his inevitable fate. The woman whose Mangekyo was the singularity screamed many things in horror, because she did not just swallow up your brother and mother, but at least a dozen others. It's crucial, Sasuke, that your father did not activate his Mangekyo until after this woman spoke. She revealed what she could see where she had accidentally sent them. Minato paused for a moment to sip his tea, glancing up at the tension emanating from Sasuke and realizing he chose the worst time to pause. They were not killed by the jutsu, but simply sent somewhere else. Based on Shisui's hate of your family, I believe he had a body replica of your entire family made and placed them around the battlefield. I knew something was amiss because he thoughtlessly threw down a body of Fugaku, despite the actual man surviving past the initial incident. He told me that he only procured 2 bodies, for himself and Itachi because they were Anbu, Sasuke muttered through gritted teeth. Unfortunately, it seems, even in his dying moments, Shisui wanted you to suffer further. You are a part of the family he hated the most, and couldn't let go of it even to the bitter end. Minato shrugged, leaning back in his chair and relaxing his posture. Given the amount of missing people during the investigation afterward, we would have assumed Itachi died as well, with or without a body to identify. We didn't need that replica. I'm terribly sorry that you have to hear this story incomplete so many times, but I believe I have the most information thanks to Fugaku. Why wouldn't you tell me that I have living family members? Sasuke asked, anger whispering out in an undertone. The woman described where she sent them as a colorless desert, Minato explained. I've searched history books and maps from across the world to identify where this place may be just in case, but I knew that I wouldn't find a similar place. Like Fugaku said, it was a space-time jutsu. What does that mean? Sasuke pressed, impatient with Minato's speed of explanation. It means they're probably not here on this planet, Minato said carefully, holding a hand up to Sasuke to let him continue. I've dubbed places like that as elsewhere. I would not say that they're out there among the stars. Rather, they were stuffed into a world that any of us could easily access with that same Mangekyo power. But without that power, it would be nearly impossible. I believe they were ejected into a pocket dimension. I've assumed as all these years have passed that they could not possibly have survived a place like that, but I have never given up the possibility that I could one day find them through other means. Why wouldn't you tell me? Sasuke asked again, still fuming. Sasuke, your clan is capable of immense love, but that also makes you all quite easily corruptible. If you had learned this information sooner, you would have run away and blindly spent your whole life fruitlessly looking for them. As Hokage, I have far more resources than nearly anyone else in the world, and I've used those resources over the years to try and find them. But it's beyond even me, Minato told Sasuke firmly. Wait, you think I can replicate a Mangekyo ability? A Kekkei Genkai? Sakura asked doubtfully. Everything has an origin point, Minato elaborated. Do I think you'll be able to learn all jutsu and do anything? No, that's just too much knowledge for someone to realize all on their own. But if you learned to hone how to discover specific jutsu, you could save both Kushina and rescue Sasuke's family. As Sakura contemplated the gravity of what Minato asked of her, Sasuke sat in quiet frustration about what may have actually happened. Perhaps his father didn't remember surviving the incident when he used the remote Edo Tensei because it was just so jarring an experience. Grimacing and snarling, Sasuke couldn't make heads or tails of what happened or why. Naruto, meanwhile, who had been silently listening to all this new information, looked at his father squarely. Who is the Akatsuki? Smiling faintly, Minato sighed. They're a mysterious group with mysterious intentions. Even in collaboration with the other nations, we don't know who their members all are or what their goals are. They're simultaneously the most dangerous and enigmatic group to pose a threat against the various nations of the world. The only certainty that we have is that they like to target village leaders and Jinchuriki. Other than them, do we have any enemies left? Naruto continued. Yes, of course, Minato nodded. Orochimaru has been born anew, and apparently in a far different state than any of us remember him being. Why have you told us all of this? Sakura asked cautiously. There is a significant shift this village needs to make, Minato answered, gaining power in his voice, as though this was his original directive. I am currently rebuilding the Anbu Black Ops, not for protection, but to perform the most difficult missions for the village. Our numbers have been crushed, so we need to make the most of what we have left. I was compromised for 4 years, during which time the village paid dearly. I need you three specifically to band together on these tasks. Naruto, you must rekindle your friendship with the fox at all costs, so that we may explore that next option of freeing a second fox upon the world. Only the fox can assimilate so much of its own chakra. Only the fox can destroy so much of its own chakra. Sasuke, for your sake and the village's, we must find those members who were swallowed up. If they live, they will provide an exponential growth of power and protection for the village, and your clan will be rejuvenated. Sakura, you must use this forbidden knowledge laid upon you to rediscover the lost jutsu that can facilitate both Naruto and Sasuke's missions. Your fates are now intertwined. Without one of you, the other two are unlikely to solve their own riddles. Meanwhile, even greater change may be on the horizon, Minato uttered, frowning. I am overwhelmed with guilt and shame for these last 4 years. I cannot in good conscience continue to lead the village. The village elders have been extremely resistant to my attempted retirement, but I cannot know that I can properly and fully protect the village anymore. The Sand has named their new Kazekage as Chiyo, an elderly lady that can at least protect them for the next 10 years, while other candidates are cultivated. The Water has had to completely rebuild their infrastructure after their surrender. The Rock may not continue to exist, which will create a struggle for power. The world's changing and we must with it. I might follow the example of the Sand and choose an interim leader to buy time as we look for a more long-term candidate. And that's the end of today's episode. I tried to tie off all the loose ends as well as give hints of what might be coming in the future. There's not really that much to say here, I say, the Rambler man. I'm not going to do a riddle this time because it's the end of an arc. That way, you're all going totally blind into what's coming next. For the next couple weeks, my schedule will be as follows. No episode this week because Christmas. Next week, I'll be putting up one off-topic video because I personally celebrate New Year's, and as an adult, I'm going to need like a whole day to recover from that. So instead of doing these delayed episodes, I'll just hold off on the rewrite for one more week, and then the next episode will be on January 10th. Feels like such a long time from now, but hopefully this is a satisfying end that everyone can spend time theory crafting about. I've had an extremely busy few weeks, never mind the personal busyness that just comes along with the Christmas season. Through Discord and YouTube, I've come to realize that I've accidentally made a really good climax for the time skip arc. Not that I'm ever trying to write bad, but this turned out really well. The culmination into battling between the Triumphant 12 and with Minato ended up playing out phenomenally. There's been nothing but glowing compliments for how I've structured the fighting. Well, not nothing, but the negatives are just like that faint third shadow that appears when there's multiple sources of light. It's so vague and light that you can barely even see it. That's how I would describe negatives against my rewrite on the whole. And it often just comes down to personal opinion, like people hate Kakashi and are glad he's not so prevalent, or people that love Tenten and are glad that she's getting so much more attention, or when people are upset that Minato's so infallible, or that the Seven Swordsmen haven't had a great turnout yet. It's great that people have positive and negative outlooks on individual characters or groups, but that's not something that anyone can ever satisfy for all people. Someone's going to be dissatisfied with at least one of the characters. Now, I still get the occasional comment asking why Naruto's so dark and negative, or that Shino should have gotten Chomei. Yeah, I broke the theme of some characters a little bit, but that's so that I can give them flair. For those who aren't knowledgeable with writing, there are two types of characters you can write. There's static characters and there's dynamic characters. In most cases in anime and manga, the protagonist is static. Son Goku, Monkey D. Luffy, Naruto Uzumaki, and Kurosaki Ichigo, characters that are fundamentally the same person in Chapter 1 as they are in Chapter 500. They don't change. They're always positive, always laughing, always good, always protective. And these kinds of characters are great in their own right. But it's the dynamic characters that trigger a far more emotive experience for most people. Prince Vegeta, Eren Yeager, Izuku Midoriya, Killua Zoldich. These are always fan-favorite characters. People love watching Midoriya find that lost courage against an increasingly daunting foe, or Prince Vegeta trying to kill Goku as a show of power, to becoming that man's greatest rival and friend. Eren goes from idealistic and vengeful to someone who's thoughtful of morality and freedom. Killua is a cold-blooded assassin who becomes one of the most empathetic characters in Hunter x Hunter. I have so much more to say about the dynamic characters because they constantly evolve and change throughout the story. That's both interesting to me to read or watch, and challenging and exciting to write. Regardless of where I want Naruto's endpoint to be in the story, I changed his starting personality so that I could challenge myself to that. And I also think it's just more realistic for him to be more negative, with the whole village irritated by his presence and all that. Anyway, this episode's been delayed long enough, and I need to get through the whole editing process. As always, thank you everyone for watching through to the end like this. The sky's the limit.